Hello and welcome to another episode of 33 and a Third, a show of me chatting and music from my good friends. Music that I hope you enjoy, and then we'll go and follow up on who these bands and groups and singers and musicians are. One of my favourite musicians or poets of the day of old, was William Blake. And I've done a few shows about him on my channel. You can find some of my where I've done recitations of his work with some puppets, or William Blake puppets, and some renditions of his work. He used to sing a lot of his, what we now class as his poetry, to his friends, but we don't know how it was sung or the tune. And one of the most famous songs that is now known of William Blake is Jerusalem, and that was made into a tune by, I've forgotten the dude that did it, but back in the 1900s. But we don't know what tune William Blake himself would sing it to, which is why there's so many different versions of it, but it's still an empowering set of words to go forth with. But it reminds me of what one of William Blake's quotes, one of the most well-known: "I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's. I will not reason compare, my business is to create." And we don't want to be enslaved by another man, so most people are. That's why most people are sheep. They follow along and become part of the system of somebody who thinks they know best. Where William Blake was an individual, a rebelling against any kinds of systems. I think this might be also why he did a lot of work on theology. He was looking at his way of finding what he thought was the creation of the world, what the divine source really meant. And his impression of the divine source, well, it's not actually, it's his impression of the devil, Satan, with coming down with the compasses. Many people mistake for being the impression of the divine source, but it's not. He's like saying that this material world was made by the more dark side. Bit Gnostic, don't you think? So by creating his own system, he was stamping out his individuality. And I find that people do, whether it's Gurdjieff work, Steiner work, or any kind of esoteric teaching, it's normally because they realise that they don't want to be part of a system, but they want to be themselves, the real version of themselves. They want to be their real I, as Gurdjieff would say. But alas, we are enslaved in government systems as we go along, which is why the Gurdjieff work is trying to help us to live in this lunatic asylum, as he calls it. So we don't want to be caught up in somebody else's system. We might have to go along with it and play the role of being a part of it, but deep inside, in our own hearts and our minds, we're creating our own system, our own self, our own world. Now, there is a brilliant album by my friend Guy Pearson called Glad Day, and it's, again, a personal journey around the world of William Blake, and I'm going to play the track The Angel.
I dreamed a dream, what can it mean? And that I was a maiden queen, guarded by an angel mild. Witless woe was ne'er beguiled, and I wept both night and day. And he wiped my tears away, and I wept both day and night, and he from him my heart's delight. So he took his wings and fled. Then the morn blushed rosy red. I cried my tears and donned my fear. shields and spears. Soon my angel came again. I was oft he came in vain, for the time of youth was fled, and gray hairs on my head. I wept both night and day, and he wiped my tears away. And I wept both day and night, and he made my heart's delight.
So I was reminded that Hugo Parry was the dude who put William Blake's Jerusalem to music. It was one of my favourite hymns at school. I feel like it is the English anthem. And did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountains green? And was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen? And did the countenance divine shine forth upon our clouded hills? And was Jerusalem builded here among these dark satanic mills? Bring me my bow of burning gold, bring me my arrows of desire, bring me my spear, O clouds unfold, bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. And so may Jerusalem rise. There's many esoteric mystics and teachers that discuss the rising of Jerusalem again, the mystical Jerusalem that's going to be full of God's, the divine source's love and life, and for those that are worthy, they can go and live in it. You know, many people talk about how the new world is going to ascend down, the old world will descend up, and perhaps the two will become one, and we'll have the new version of a new world, an enlightened world. And I myself feel we are in one of those changing periods. I feel like we're in what some would call the Kali Yuga. It's the end times that are coming, an apocalypse, and hopefully things are changing for the better. But it is difficult to cease from the mental fight. We have things thrown at us all the time that are trying to distract us from the work we should be doing. We have to have our sword in our hand ready, but not a sword to go and cut down people, but to cut away all them the chains that they are trying to hold us down with. We want that bow of burning gold to send forth an arrow of desire, that desire that goes back to be one with the divine. And so, of course, Jerusalem is telling the story of Joseph of Arimathea, who some believe was the uncle of the young Jesus when he was a boy, so would have been part of the family line. Jesus becomes Christ when the Holy Spirit comes down upon him in his when he's 30 years old, when he goes to be baptized by John the Baptist. The Holy Spirit comes down which is like the Christ force develops within him, which can happen to any of us if we work upon ourselves. But Joseph of Arimathea was obviously there when Christ was crucified. I believe the Christ force then left the young man Jesus. When he was put into the tomb, he was, who knows what happened. Personally, I think it was some kind of divine miracle, but he rises again. But Joseph of Arimathea, I think, took the young Jesus to England and probably took him to, well, they say to Glastonbury. I think he met up with the Druids there, and young Jesus learnt about the Druid way of being. And I think Jesus probably did do a lot of travelling. They say that Joseph of Arimathea was a trader, so he would have gone to other countries to trade, and probably needed tin from from England. We had it in Cornwall, and needed something from Glastonbury, maybe some kind of, I don't know whether they needed herbs or plants that maybe only grew in Glastonbury. But he, Joseph of Arimathea, I believe, was quite a spiritual person anyway, and was probably showing Jesus all the different ways of other people, of finding their way to God. As I've said before, there's many paths to God. It's not just the Christian way or the Muslim way or the Jewish way. There's many different paths. God's door is always open, along whatever path you come along. So in Jerusalem, by William Blake, he's talking about how Joseph of Arimathea came to this land, brought the young boy, and possibly even brought, some say maybe his body. Some say it could be just that he came back to here after Christ was killed on the cross, and so was still bringing forth, as they say, the green and pleasant land, by bringing that Christ emanation to our country, to England. Now we have a track from Jude Cowan's album Lamb and Tiger, which is all on William Blake's poems that she's put to music, and we're having the song The Divine Image.
To mercy, pity, peace and love are praying their distress, and to these virtues of delight return their
So Blake had quite a few aphorisms. He liked to think things through. And he had wise sayings, such as, "The cistern contains, the fountain overflows. Who can be bound down is no genius." We must flow free, like Bruce Lee says, be like water. The tigers of wrath are wiser than the horses of instruction. Which I've always found quite an interesting one, because you'd think that the horses of instruction, would they be wiser than the tigers of wrath? I suppose the tigers of wrath maybe angry because no one's listening to them, or being told by the horses the way to do it when they knows better. Maybe the tigers break free. The busy bee has no time for sorrow. The fox condemns the trap, not himself. Those which urge us to learn wisdom from the faults or excesses of ourselves or others. Well, that's quite wise, isn't it? We do have to learn from our faults. We learn from our mistakes, whether they're our own or other people's. Dip him in the river who loves water. Drive your cart and your plough over the bones of the dead. That's a bit ominous, but I was told that's to do with being not fettered by inherited prejudices. And we shouldn't have prejudices. We should be impartial. Those which bid us trust our impulses. The road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. Expect poison from standing water, which is true. That's why everything should be flowing. When things are standing still, they become stagnant. And many people get stagnant in their beliefs and their ways because they're not flowing. They're just standing still, adamant that they are right in what they believe in, and they don't need to learn anything else. Where things are continuously flowing, really, and we can always learn more. He who desires but acts not breeds pestilence. Well, isn't that true? So many people are, as I call them, dreamers, but they're not doers. I like people that dream but then go on to do and fulfill their dreams, but many people live in dreams and don't actually do. Eternity is in love with the productions of time. Isn't that just marvellous? Eternity. Is that infinity, or is eternity an ongoing time? And time really goes along because of productions. We measure time by our life scales or by what we're doing. So it's all measured by productions. And he reminds us that we must insist on the importance of the imagination and of truth. Blake says, "Imagination is my world." And I've spoken a lot about imagination in other shows and explaining how in the esoteric mystical way we're thinking of a far more powerful imagination than just daydreaming. We're using imagination to create. It's a magical process. Those on the duty of forgiveness and the importance of kindly thought for others. We do have to forgive, and we have to forgive ourselves and others. And it is important to be kind. But we get tripped up by people that catch us off guard. The roarings of lions, the howling of wolves, are portions of eternity too great for the eye of man. The eye sees more than the heart knows. And it kind of reminds me of Blake's Tiger, Tiger, when he's questioning, did he who made the lamb make thee? You know, and how he's discussing how the divine source made all creatures and saw things saw so much potential in people and creatures and animals and trees and plants and this whole planet. And as Blake reminds us, joys impregnate, sorrows bring forth. Blake also wrote, "There is no natural religion," and he saw this as an attack on deism. And he was quite concerned about this doctrine that God keeps himself aloof from this world and that he interferes. Absolutely not. He's given us free will, so we must do what we want to do. And it seems that Blake was quite against this. He talks about it in his prophetic books, and he gives the name of Vala, and later Rahab. And this was to be the state of those who teach these doctrines of what the divine does and does not do. And Blake seems to be concerned about man running freely. He talks about man's desires are limited by his perceptions. None can desire what he has not perceived. And he used this picture of, he drew a female swan. And I was told by somebody in the Blake Society, because I'm part of the William Blake Society, that for Blake, the swan meant reason, and that its reasoning, rationality, can be taken in two ways. People can either reason and think to make things better, or they can reason and rationalize so that they can justify their own beliefs and that nothing should be changed, everything should stay the same. And people don't like change, do they? They find it very difficult. People like things to be safe and secure, which is why I think a lot of people don't get along with life itself. They find it very difficult when change happens or shocks happen. People just want the same old, I'm surprised at how many people would like the same old thing to happen day after day. They get up, they have their breakfast, and then throughout the day the same thing happens at every hour, and every day forever. It's safe and secure. Where for me, I'm a bit more of I like things to be a bit more chaotic. I don't like things to be set in stone. I like to be able to do what I want when I want and not follow any particular pattern. And I know that niggles a lot of people. They like to put things in a box or put people in a box, and people that are free thinkers or do what they want and don't follow a mechanical set regime way of life, well, that niggles at them and upsets them, and they see us as disrupting their harmony. They see us as chaotic, when really life and the universe is chaotic, and we have to be ready for that. Most people aren't. But it reminds me that Blake also wrote a book called All Religions Are One, and in this he's talking about poetic genius. He talks about a true man, and he's insisting, as all men are alike in outward form, so, and with the same infinite variety, all are alike in the poetic genius. All men who speak from the heart intend truth, though infinitely various. So all religions have one source. The poetic genius is that source. So that source, that one source, obviously is the divine, and then the divine has created some kind of archetype for everything. There's an archetype horse, there's an archetype dog, there's an archetype swan, there's an archetype version of man, an archetype version of woman. That's all the original, the perfected version, and we are all facsimiles, that is from that first one others have been made, and each copy gets a bit less like the original perfect one, and so forth, till they become more and more, I was going to say demented then, but that's quite a strong word, but they have faults in them as we go further and further away from the divine. Which is why we're working on ourselves in esoteric ways, because we want to reach up to perfection again. We're trying to better ourselves. And as Blake writes in the Book of Fell, does the eagle know what is in the pit? Or wilt thou go ask the mole? Can wisdom be put in a silver rod, or love in a golden bowl? So that's all about limitations, and whether we have our own special powers that can help us understand who we are and how we can make ourselves a better person and go forward and create. That was so important to Blake. Go and create, whether you're an artist, a writer, a poet, a gardener, create whatever it is, many things, many different things we can be, but create with that, whatever we're doing. Don't just copy. Don't just be mechanical and robotic. Create. And he also writes that Fell said, "O thou little virgin of the peaceful valley, giving to those that cannot crave, the voiceless, the overtired, thy breath doth nourish the innocent lamb. He smells thy milky garments, he crops thy flowers while thou sittest smiling in his face, wiping his mild and meek mouth from all contagious taints." And Fell asked, "How is it that you, the creature of a moment, do not complain?" "Because," was the answer, "we clouds water our steeds at the golden springs where Luva, love, doth renew his horses. It is so delightful to live for others, to refresh the tender blossoms, for example." "But," interposes Fell mournfully, "I water no flowers. In the end I shall be food for worms." And okay, that is something we will all be. One day, food for worms. But we must make sure we live this life as lively and as well as possible. Live, 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 Blake would encourage. And don't just follow along, as I said at the beginning. Or as Blake reminds us, don't just follow somebody else's system. Create your own.
William Blake was ironic yet serious, as he sung and painted the mysteries. He was told by angels to listen to God, but he had already seen him when a tot. Blake searched for ancient truths and golden times, and he found the answers in his mind. He had one foot in this world, the other stood in the spiritual realm. He talked to his beloveds all the time, no matter whether they were dead or alive. Blake painted and etched and wrote poetry whilst he sketched. Biblical scenes and historical encounters he made into art whilst he sat at the counter. Visions of his late brother Robert, who taught him how to etch proper. With a mirror backwards he learnt to write, so that his etchings came out just right. He didn't believe in a natural religion, yet he was God-fearing. Blake produced illuminated books about the soul, spirit, and mankind's ultimate goal. Blake created a system so that he would not be a slave to any other man's belief in a deity or way. He believed himself a spirit of prophecy, looking for innocence amongst the cacophony. And as his feet walked the streets of London, the place became Jerusalem. He opened the gates of paradise to find that it was now hell and full of vice. He believed in liberty, that every man, woman and child should be free, free to sing and free to dance. Blake liked to hear the children laugh. For everything that lives is holy, and to Blake life should be rosy. But he saw the torment and the pain as he walked in London's lanes. Blake protested with rhyme and verse, and pictures to explain his universe. Stubborn in his thoughts and obsessive in his work, he came across a bit berserk. He wrote The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, and cast young Catherine under his spell. Sir William used his innocence, and gave her songs of experience, as he travelled in his mind and wrote a new Bible on the creation of mankind. To see and behold his wonderful art, to hear his words of light and dark, William Blake and his visionary prose, William Blake, the English Rose.
Now Blake painted a lot of what I would call theological art, a lot of depictions of Christ, a lot of depictions of various characters in the Bible, depictions of the devil and the dark forces. So he was obviously looking for a connection. He loved his theology. He was also looking at his own beliefs and what he was imagining. He saw angels. He could, apparently when he was a child, he saw God at his window, which must have been, what an amazing sight to have seen. And Blake, he's always telling everybody to work upon themselves, cultivate your talents and what you can do. And he says, this is Blake, men are admitted to heaven, not because they have curbed and governed their passions or have no passions, but because they have cultivated their understandings. Works of art. Works of art can only be produced in perfection whether man is either in affluence or above the care of it. What it will be questioned when the sun rises. Do you not see a round disk of fire, somewhat like a guinea? Oh, no, 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 I see an innumerable company of the heavenly host crying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. I question not my corporal or vegetative eye any more than I would question a window concerning a sight. I look through it and not with it. So, in a way, Blake's saying we've got to look at things with our, not just our normal eyes, but with our spiritual eyes. We have to be able to see what is really there. And I know many people say, oh, I'm just looking and there is the sun in the air. But if we start looking with our spiritual eyes, we can see beyond the veil, we see beyond the material realm, because there's many realms all interacting within the one, what we would call this earthly realm. There's a spiritual realm and an etheric realm. And I believe William Blake could see into these other realms, and he was probably frustrated. Well, I know he was frustrated that other people couldn't see that. You know, he could see the angels in the trees. And let's take Rudolf Steiner, for example. He talks about how the angels or the different elementals work in everything, in trees, plants, animals, you know, stars, other planets. Everything's got an elemental in it, and I believe this is what William Blake was capable of seeing. And as Blake writes in the Book of Fell, does the eagle know what is in the pit, or wilt thou go ask the mole? Can wisdom be put in a silver rod, or love in a golden bowl? So that's all about limitations and whether we have our own special powers that can help us understand who we are and how we can make ourselves a better person and go forward and create. That was so important to Blake. Go and create, whether you're an artist, a writer, a poet, a gardener. Create whatever it is, you know, many things, many different things we can be, but create with that, whatever we're doing. Don't just copy. Don't just be mechanical and robotic. Create. And he also writes that Fell said, O thou little virgin of the peaceful valley, giving to those that cannot crave, the voiceless, the overtired, thy breath doth nourish the innocent lamb. He smells thy milky garments, he crops thy flowers while thou sittest smiling in his face, wiping his mild and meek in mouth from all contagious taints. And Fell asks, how is it that you, the creature of a moment, do not complain? Because, was the answer, we clouds water our steeds at the golden springs where Luva, love, doth renew his horses. It is so delightful to live for others, to refresh the tender blossoms, for example. But, interposes Fell mournfully, I water no flowers. In the end I shall be food for worms. And okay, that is something we will all be. One day, food for worms. But we must make sure we live this life as lively and as well as possible. Live, 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 Blake would encourage. And don't just follow along, as I said at the beginning. Don't, or as Blake reminds us, don't just follow somebody else's system. Create your own. Well, thank you for watching this episode of 33 1/3. I'd like to thank all the artists that contributed to it. All rights remain with all the artists that have performed for this show. If you are an artist yourself or know any musicians that would like to be in the show, get in touch. And once again, I thank you for listening to me ranting on. And enjoy your life, live life. Go and look at some William Blake art and be inspired and find your imagination. Thank you all, and love and light and peace and more to you.